When the yacht was sinking and there was only one spot left on the lifeboat, Gabriel chose me. I was successfully rescued, but Serena never got a second lifeboat. She drowned in the sea, leaving no trace behind. Gabriel pretended not to care and still went ahead with our wedding. 5 years into our marriage, he crushed me into the dust, blaming me for Serena's death. When I couldn't bear it anymore and wanted a divorce, he chose to perish together with me. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day the yacht accident happened. This time, I decided to give the chance to survive to his most beloved person. Lena, you come up first. When I realized I had been reborn, our yacht had already begun taking on water. The lifeboat on board only had space for 2 people, and among the 3 of us, only Gabriel knew how to operate the yacht. So one of those 2 spots had to be his. As for the remaining 2 people, after an intense internal struggle, Gabriel ultimately reached his hand out to me. But I took a step back. Then I firmly refused Gabriel's request. Gabriel, save Serena first. This lifetime, I refuse to bear the burden of anyone dying because of me. Upon hearing this, Gabriel seemed to exhale deeply in relief, even the frown that had been etched on his forehead finally smoothing out. He immediately took Serena's hand and led her to the lifeboat. Lena, you're my fiancée, and I was supposed to save you first. But since you insist on saving Serena first, just wait here, I promise I'll come back with help to rescue you. Just wait. With that, he strode away with Serena without even sparing me a glance, as though afraid I might change my mind. How ridiculous, did he think everyone was like him? That's exactly what happened in my past life when he took me away from the sea first, leaving Serena alone on the yacht. Even though we immediately contacted the Coast Guard for rescue after returning, Serena still drowned. What they fished out was just a corpse. At first, Gabriel showed no unusual reaction upon hearing the news. He merely handled Serena's funeral arrangements calmly and gave her family a large sum of money to console them. The only request he made was probably choosing a prime burial spot for Serena. Naturally, I didn't refuse, and even considerately asked if he wanted to postpone our wedding. Yet he flatly rejected it. I still remember how he held my hand and said, "Lena, I will definitely marry you and bring you home." Only later did I realize that he was determined to marry me, specifically to bring me home and torment me, to make me atone for Serena's sins life after life. But what did Serena's death have to do with me? Watching their retreating figures, I immediately began figuring out ways to save myself. After all, this time, I couldn't be sure if Gabriel would still bring the police back with him. In my past life, it was his treasured white moonlight who stayed behind, which was why he immediately called the police as soon as he reached an area with phone signal. But this time, his white moonlight was safely by his side. Would he even remember me? After all, the person he wanted to save in both lifetimes was his childhood sweetheart, Serena. Speaking of which, he and Serena grew up together. The years she spent by his side were naturally incomparable to anyone else's. Even his choice to save me first was merely because rescuing Serena first would have drawn criticism toward my status as his fiancé. So even though his heart belonged to Serena, even though he deeply loved her, he still chose to save me first. Only, in our previous life, Gabriel regretted this choice bitterly. Now, I've made up for that decision for him. He should thank me. It wasn't until their figures had completely disappeared that I hurriedly began thinking of ways to save myself. Though the yacht was taking on water, many items inside could still be of use. As the water continued to rise, I hurried inside the yacht to retrieve the lifebuoys and life jackets I had stored there earlier. In my previous life, I had prepared several lifebuoys in advance because I couldn't swim but still wanted to enjoy the beach. Now they were finally coming in handy. I gathered all the lifebuoys, then hastily put on the life jacket, inflated the buoys, and secured one around myself. I also found the last few packs of chocolate and bottles of mineral water inside. Taking a deep breath as the yacht began to sink completely, I started swimming toward the shore. Although this was deep-sea territory, local fishermen frequently came here to fish, so it wasn't exactly a remote area. As long as I could encounter a fishing boat, I'd be saved. The only problem was, it was the middle of the night. Even if there were fishing boats nearby, their engines made so much noise that few would be able to hear my cries for help. Fortunately, I didn't give up and kept swimming toward the shore. But the weather is unpredictable. After a cloudless day, dark storm clouds had begun gathering overhead. Just like in my previous life, it wasn't long before torrential rain began pouring down. That was what had made the rescue so difficult last time, leading to Serena not being saved. But in this life, gazing at the endless sea, I swam with even greater determination. After swimming for nearly an hour, I finally spotted a yacht drifting unsteadily ahead. I immediately raised my arms and shouted at the people on the yacht. "Help! Is anyone there? Save me, save me!" My voice grew louder as raindrops began to scatter from the sky. At first, they were just fine droplets, but within minutes, the rain gradually turned into a torrential downpour. I watched the yacht that was almost out of sight and felt a surge of despair, but still, I didn't give up and shouted desperately. "Someone! Help me, save me!" Just as I was on the verge of despair, a figure suddenly appeared on the yacht. He turned on a flashlight and cast its beam onto the sea. He heard me. "I'm saved!" Almost instantly, overwhelming joy flooded my chest, and I frantically swam toward the beam of light. "Help! Help me, please!" With the last ounce of my strength, I barely made it to the side of the yacht when the ladder was immediately lowered. As I climbed up, there were several moments when I nearly lost my grip. The moment I stepped onto the yacht, my legs gave way, and I started to collapse onto the deck. But just as my knees were about to hit the surface, a pair of strong, steady hands caught me. "Are you okay?" I let out a long breath. "I'm fine, thank you." I practically melted into his embrace, too exhausted from the prolonged physical exertion to muster even a shred of energy. The man frowned as he glanced at me, then picked me up directly and carried me inside the yacht. He took me to a room inside and handed me a change of clothes. "You're soaked. Change into these first." "Okay." As soon as he walked out, I quickly stripped off my drenched sleepwear. Everything had happened so suddenly that I hadn't even had time to change. Just as I finished changing, there was a knock at the door. I walked over and opened it. The man walked in carrying a bowl of noodles and placed it on the nearby table, gesturing for me to try it. Only then did I get a clear look at the man's face. His features were sharp and well-defined, likely a military man, exuding an unmistakably upright and righteous aura. But I was too hungry. I finished the noodles in the bowl before speaking to him. "Hello, my name is Lena. Thank you so much for saving me." Julian glanced at my nearly soaked hair and the faint, barely noticeable wounds on my hands. "Let me dry your hair and bandage those wounds for you." I frowned. There are bacteria in seawater. If you don't disinfect it promptly, it could get infected." Okay, thanks." As soon as he finished speaking, he draped the towel over my head and began gently drying my hair. Then he picked up the iodine solution and carefully applied it to the wound. Biting my lip, I watched him drying my hair, and suddenly felt a warmth bloom in my chest. I remember in my past life, when I had just married Gabriel, he got drunk one time. As I helped him back to his room and suggested he drink less, he flew into a rage and shoved me to the ground. Losing my balance, the back of my head hit the floor hard, and blood immediately gushed out. I cried out in shock, staring at the blood on my hands and whimpering in pain. Gabriel just watched me coldly, his voice icy as he spoke. "Does it hurt? Good. When Serena left, she must have hurt 1,000 times worse than this. But she's dead, she's forever lost beneath the sea. If I hadn't been saving you back then, she wouldn't have drowned. Lena, all of this is because of you." I let the blood flow freely from my head, staring at him in utter disbelief. My heart grew colder inch by inch, unable to believe these words had come from his mouth. After a long silence, I finally spoke. "Gabriel, your rivals were the ones who sabotaged the yacht, and you were the one who told me to get on that lifeboat. Now you're blaming me?" Don't you find this utterly ridiculous? The drunkenness faded from Gabriel's face, replaced by an even deeper chill. Lena, I never agreed to this arranged marriage from the beginning. If you hadn't told Grandma you liked me, I would never have been forced to marry you. Ha ha ha. I burst into laughter, looking at Gabriel as if he were a joke. So you're saying all of this is my fault? Gabriel, instead of blaming your rivals or your family's pressure, you come to blame me? You're absolutely sick. After saying that, I turned around and took a taxi to the hospital alone to treat my wounds. From then on, our relationship froze over, and from that moment, I never showed him even a hint of vulnerability again. But now, this stranger before me is afraid I might be in pain, handling my hand with the utmost gentleness. My eyes suddenly stung, and I quickly turned my face away, taking a deep breath to suppress the tears welling up. Thank you. Julian, however, looked up and spoke with a pure smile. You're welcome. Julian, are you there? A sudden voice came from the doorway, where a man in pajamas with black-framed glasses stood. The moment he saw me, his gaze immediately settled on me. You called earlier about someone drowning, was it this young lady? Julian nodded, then turned to look at me. This is the yacht's doctor. Let him give you a quick checkup first to see if there are any issues. I nodded. Julian immediately stepped aside to let the doctor in. The doctor approached me, performed a brief examination, and after asking a few simple questions, confirmed I had no external injuries, just exhaustion from swimming for too long. He then stood up and said to Julian, "This lady has no major health concerns. She's just been adrift at sea for too long and is physically exhausted. Proper rest will help her recover." Julian nodded and then escorted the doctor out. At the doorway, the two exchanged a few hushed words. Taking advantage of their conversation, I glanced outside. As the rain grew heavier, the ocean's surface became nearly indistinguishable, swallowed by boundless darkness. I felt a flicker of relief. Then I turned my gaze to the entrance. After seeing the doctor off, Julian stepped back inside and spoke in a gentle voice. The yacht will dock shortly. Where do you live? Let me take you home, okay? Most likely due to selfish motives, I suddenly didn't want to go home anymore. After all, my parents hardly ever came home, and even if they did, there was no guarantee I'd see them. Besides, given how little they cared about me, they probably wouldn't even ask if I didn't return home for a whole month. As for Gabriel, since we died together in my past life, there's a good chance he's also been reborn now. He's probably overjoyed by his second chance, holding Serena close and spending the rest of his life with her. In my past life, we were married for 5 years, yet he never once took me to any public events or even shared a bedroom with me. He even took over my family's company and withheld my allowance. Whenever others asked about me, he would just look at me with disdain, making me the biggest joke in our social circle. As for this lifetime, let those two be together forever then. So, turning to Julian beside me, I spoke with a hint of pleading in my voice. I have nowhere to go. Could you take me in for a few days? When he didn't react, I could only tug at the corner of his sleeve with my hand, gazing at him with pitiful, longing eyes. If I remember correctly, he should be that rich second-generation heir, the only person who helped me when I wanted a divorce in my past life. Having saved me twice across 2 lifetimes, he definitely can't be a bad person. Seeing me pitifully staring at him, he suddenly lowered his head, his gaze burning with intensity. I'm no saint. Staying with me comes at a price. Perhaps the sudden closeness made me dizzy, as I could even smell the minty scent on him, so pleasant it almost made my head spin. Fine, any request will do. Is it true? Of course. I declared firmly, looking straight at him, but he suddenly smiled. However, the yacht eventually docked because I had been drifting in the sea for too long and had started running a low fever. As Julian carried me off the yacht, a familiar voice suddenly called out from nearby. Lena? Is that really you? It was Gabriel, who had come with the police to organize a search and rescue. Seeing me, Gabriel suddenly rushed over, his eyes filled with concern. Lena, are you okay? I got out of Julian's embrace and looked at him. Do I look like anything's wrong to you? Gabriel stared at me in silence. Serena, however, stepped forward from behind him. After glancing at Julian behind me, she asked bluntly, Lena, did you board his yacht? But when our yacht had the accident, there weren't any other yachts nearby. It was pitch black all around. How did you get rescued then? I was confused. What exactly did Serena mean by that? Although you and Gabriel are preparing for an arranged marriage, you're both bidding for the ACD project. Since you're not the project lead in your group, naturally you wouldn't need to attend. But Gabriel has to represent his corporation in the bidding, and of all times, something happens at this critical moment. Lena, when so many coincidences pile up, can it truly be coincidence? Or could these coincidences be man-made? What does she mean? Does she think I was the one who sabotaged the yacht? I genuinely sympathize with Serena's suffering in her past life, but that doesn't mean I'll let her slander me. Besides, in this lifetime, it seems I was the one who saved her. And now after being rescued, she turns around to bite me. Really? Had I known, I should have just let her drown in the ocean. Looking at the police officer nearby, I immediately shouted, Officer, I want to report a crime, someone here is spreading rumors. Soon after, we were all taken away by the police. While waiting for questioning, Serena continued glaring at me relentlessly. Lena, why won't you answer me? Is it because everything I said is true, and you're too scared to respond? I turned my head and gave her a cold stare. Are you the police? Why should I explain anything to you? Who do you think you are? She repays kindness with enmity. And still expects me to treat her with courtesy? Serena was momentarily speechless, while Gabriel beside her couldn't stand it any longer and stepped forward to speak. Lena, how can you say that? Serena just wants to know the truth of the matter. After all, she's a victim of this shipwreck too. If she's a victim, then am I not? Gabriel turned livid with anger at my words and pointed at me directly. Lena. Serena just wants to know the facts. You're being utterly unreasonable. Just coming out of the interrogation room, Julian witnessed the scene and immediately walked up to me. What's this? Trying to start something in a police station? Julian's face was dark, his tone carrying an undeniable pressure as he glared at Gabriel with an ominous intensity. I stood behind Julian, watching the tension between the two men escalate like gunpowder about to ignite. Gabriel was furious but still shielded Serena behind him, pointing at me as he demanded, What's your relationship with her? Julian deliberately turned to face me, his eyes brimming with what seemed like boundless tenderness as he gazed at me. What do you think? He asked. I raised my head, staring intently into his eyes, a pair of captivating phoenix eyes with slightly upturned outer corners and a mole beneath them. When they gazed at me, they seemed to overflow with endless tenderness. Perhaps it was the allure of his beauty, but I found myself inexplicably reaching out to hold his hand. Gabriel's face darkened several shades at the sight before him. Just as he was about to lose his temper, the police called him over to give his statement. Once everyone had been interrogated, the direction of the matter became fairly clear. The police have already identified the suspect. As soon as he is apprehended, they can proceed with their next course of action. Even though I knew it was actually Gabriel's opponent who did this, I didn't say a word until there was evidence. As we stepped out of the police station, Julian suddenly grasped my hand. Let's go. I was puzzled. What? You said you wanted to stay with me for a few days? I happen to have a spare room at my place, you can stay there. Warmed by his sincere gaze, I was about to nod in agreement when Gabriel suddenly spoke up coldly beside us. Lena, I already informed your parents about the shipwreck. They're extremely worried about you and are already rushing home by car. Listening to this, I couldn't help but feel a pang of bitterness. How absurd, I had to learn about my own parents' whereabouts from someone else. What's more, they always seemed to be busy, ever since I was little. Too busy to celebrate my birthdays, too busy to attend my parent-teacher meetings. When I was younger, I used to deliberately fail exams or pick fights with others, just to get them to show up. All for a few scraps of their affection. But eventually, I stopped expecting anything at all. On my birthday, I buy myself a birthday present to celebrate growing another year older. When there's a parent-teacher meeting, I simply give the teacher my parents' phone numbers so they can contact them directly about anything. Yet, I grew up in such loneliness until I met Gabriel. Because my parents never showed up at school, rumors spread that I was a wild child with no parents. And on that very day after school, a group of bold individuals suddenly blocked my path, demanding I hand over all my living expenses. Gabriel appeared just like that. He casually intercepted the fist about to land on me, shielding me as he glared at those who intended to bully me. "What's going on? A bunch of you ganging up on a little girl, have you no shame?" The group scattered in an instant. I looked up at the boy standing protectively in front of me, his face strikingly handsome, with beads of sweat glistening as they dripped from his chin, radiating a brilliant light. Then he turned to me and spoke. "Are you okay?" With just one glance, I was completely smitten. But back then, I lacked the courage and could only whisper softly, "I'm fine, thank you." Then I hurriedly ran toward home in a fluster. It was from that moment onward that I began paying attention to Gabriel's news, intentionally or otherwise. I knew he had a very close white moonlight, yet their relationship seemed to stop at friendship, with no intention of progressing further. At that time, I didn't understand that some people would keep their affection hidden deep in their hearts, never letting it show, even if they liked someone. Only knowing that youthful crushes always appear silent on the surface, yet in truth, they've already spread through the heart, occupying every chamber. So even an accidental encounter later would make my heart flutter, forcing me to lower my head with flushed cheeks. Yet I knew neither of us would have control over our future marriages. That's why when I learned he was my arranged match, I remained elated for ages. Even my parents favored Gabriel more, routinely contacting him more often than they did me. In my previous life, even when I proposed divorce from Gabriel, it was naturally met with their refusal. They looked at me with disappointment. Gabriel is exceptionally capable and manages the company flawlessly. So what if he has a white moonlight in his heart? It's harmless. Must you make things difficult for us? I also knew that since our marriage, our families had been in the same boat. Getting a divorce wasn't such a simple matter. So I endured year after year until I could bear it no longer. In the end, I held a knife to my own throat, forcing him to divorce me. But now that I've been given a second chance at life, I must live for myself this time. I need to calmly consider what to do next, which is why I don't want to go home yet. There is one thing, however, that I must return home to handle. I entered my phone number into Julian's device and dialed it. Only after hearing the ringtone did I return the phone to Julian. "Save my number. Can I come see you in a couple days?" Julian looked down at the saved number and nodded. "Anytime." I just hailed a taxi and left without giving Gabriel a single glance. When I got home, I saw my parents waiting for me in the living room. Before I could even speak, they immediately started scolding me like a storm. My father was the first to speak. "Gabriel has already told us everything about today. You've really disappointed me. That was the ocean that could take your life at any moment. How could you tell Gabriel to save someone else first?" My mother immediately followed up. "How could we possibly entrust the company to someone so reckless? You're utterly immature. Don't trust me? Is that why you handed the company over to Gabriel to manage, even cutting off my living allowance, just to make me obedient? If you're going to be this irresponsible, we might as well arrange the marriage sooner. You can settle into being a wealthy housewife. I will not marry Gabriel. I refuse this engagement," I stated firmly, looking them straight in the eye. "I came back specifically to tell you that I absolutely will not marry Gabriel. Whether you're satisfied with him or want to hand the company over to him, that's your business, it has nothing to do with me." Dad immediately slammed the table in anger. "You ungrateful child. Gabriel is such an outstanding young man. If you don't want to marry him, who else do you think you'll marry?" I won't marry anyone." With those words, I turned and went back to my room. They could think whatever they wanted, I didn't care anymore. The next day, I woke up early. I found them sitting at the dining table with grim expressions, staring at me as I came downstairs. Before my mother could even open her mouth to speak, my father let out a cold snort. "Since you want to break off the engagement, you..." "Enough." My mother suddenly snapped, then looked at me with a pale face. "If you really want to cancel the engagement, your father and I won't stop you. But remember, the path ahead is yours alone to walk." After saying this, my mother stood up and headed towards the door. "Come on, I'll take you to cancel the engagement." Are they agreeing to let me break off the engagement? Why does this suddenly feel so heartbreaking? The alliance between our two families was initially proposed by Gabriel's grandmother. She saw me at a banquet and took an instant liking to me, frequently inviting me to her home. After several visits, we naturally grew close. Then one day I met Gabriel, and all my overflowing affection transformed into bashfulness in his presence. Of course, Gabriel's grandmother noticed my feelings, which led to everything that followed. Now that I'm requesting to cancel the engagement, I'm afraid the poor woman will be heartbroken again. When we arrived at Gabriel's house, Gabriel and Serena had gotten there before us. Without saying much, I simply placed the items Gabriel's family had given me during our engagement on the table. Seeing this, Gabriel immediately grabbed my wrist and asked, "What do you mean by this?" Gabriel's grandmother seemed to realize something was wrong and quickly spoke up. "Lena, are you dissatisfied with Gabriel in some way?" I broke free from Gabriel's hand and spoke very calmly. "No, it's me who wants to break off the engagement with Gabriel." Upon hearing this, Gabriel immediately frowned, looking at me in disbelief. "Why?" I turned and stared straight into his eyes. "Don't you know very well why?" A hint of panic immediately flashed in Gabriel's eyes, and he quickly spoke up. "But it was you who asked me to save Serena first." I sneered at him. "I was just testing you." Gabriel immediately fell silent, staring at me wordlessly. It was his grandmother who finally heaved a sigh and spoke. "I heard about what happened yesterday. If you want to call off the engagement, I have nothing to say." "In that case..." "Grandma..." Gabriel suddenly interrupted his grandmother, his eyes fixed on me as he spoke deliberately. "Lena, I will not agree to cancel the engagement." I watched him with amusement. In my past life, he had pined for Serena for a full 5 years. Now that I was voluntarily stepping aside in this life, what was he trying to do? All this time, I had thought his feelings for her ran so deep that he would marry her immediately. If that's the case, then tomorrow I'll contact the media to unilaterally call off the engagement. When the time comes, it'll be your family that loses face. With that, I turned and walked out of the Zhou residence without even glancing at Gabriel's expression. What I didn't expect was for Gabriel to chase after me, just as Julian's car happened to be parked at the entrance. I don't want to argue with him any longer, so I simply say, "My boyfriend is here to pick me up. I'm leaving now." Julian immediately sneers, "Lena, are you sure you want someone like that as your boyfriend? Or what? Someone like you, indecisive and never admitting your mistakes?" Seeing me walk away without looking back, Julian instantly reaches out to grab my wrist. "Lena, listen to me." I winced in pain. Ouch. Julian got out of the car and immediately punched Gabriel in the face, pulling me behind him as he spoke. "Stay away from her." Sitting in Julian's car, I noticed a familiar ornament and suddenly exclaimed, "Isn't this the one I gave to my online friend?" "It's not?" Julian's face instantly flushed bright red, his ears turning crimson. Glazed ice and snow. Dead memories suddenly struck me. Back in high school, I was so lonely that I found an online friend. He claimed to be the son of B City's richest man, so I said I was a princess from some country. He boasted about being top of his class, and I countered by saying I was the school's top student. Since we never planned to meet in person anyway, we just kept spinning tall tales. Later, my phone got stolen, and because I couldn't remember the account password, we lost contact completely. At this thought, I looked at him in disbelief. You're actually the son of B City's richest man. Julian nodded, then spoke with a pout. You lied to me, that country you mentioned doesn't even exist. I cleared my throat softly and lowered my head evasively. I didn't expect, everything you said was true. Julian chuckled lightly, glancing at me during the red light pause. Do you believe me now? I nodded, then asked in confusion, then how did you recognize me? You once sent me a photo. I still remember your facial features. Seeing his earnest expression, I suddenly spoke with great solemnity, thank you. Thank you, for helping me in my past life too. That afternoon, as I was curled up on Julian's sofa watching TV, I received a call from my father. The gist was that if I could secure the project in City A, the company would be entirely handed over to me. I was aware of that project, quite a few people had their eyes on it. In my previous life, Serena's death had left me badly shaken, so naturally, I couldn't participate in that project. But even if I hadn't been traumatized, I wouldn't have competed with Gabriel, because at that time, my heart was completely his. However, at that time, the Zhou family was facing a debt crisis due to poor management, which was a major condition for them agreeing to the marriage alliance. It's just that the Zhou family's debt crisis was simply too severe. The terms of the marriage alliance alone weren't enough to secure that project. In the end, I stepped in and provided him with funds from the Yi family, which finally allowed him to win the project. That project was indeed fiercely contested by several parties. Within just a few months, it lifted the Gabriel family from the brink of bankruptcy back to life, restoring them to their former glory. But this time I'm determined to win this project. What I didn't expect, however, was that Serena would come looking for me. Lena, could you please not break off the engagement with Gabriel? There's really nothing between us. If it bothers you, I can leave the country immediately and never come back. I stared at her in silence. In my past life, I wasn't foolish enough to believe they had always been just friends. After all, Gabriel's behavior following Serena's death clearly indicated more than mere mourning for a close friend. I remember the day he agreed to divorce me. I'd been pushed to my limit. When he came home, he found me holding a knife to my throat, forcing him to end our marriage. Perhaps fearing I might actually die before his eyes, he finally relented. But on the way to finalize the divorce, without my knowledge, he turned the car toward the coastal cliffs instead. Your life now was bought with Serena's life, yet you've never shown gratitude. Lena, you disgust me. I was furious at that moment too. If you're so grateful, if you love her, then why don't you go die with her? Gabriel's eyes turned bloodshot as he slammed the accelerator, driving the car straight into the sea. It was always our debt to her, Lena. We must atone for her in this lifetime. How dare you think of running away? Ugh, what a disgusting man. I simply stood up, not wanting to argue with Serena any further, but she knelt right in front of me. Lena, I'm begging you. You really can't ruin him. I'm competing fairly, how is that ruining him? I've seen shameless people before, but never someone this shameless. I bent down and looked her in the eye. Serena, if you can't bear to let go of him, then use your family's money to support him. Your family might not be as wealthy as ours, but funding this project should still be more than enough, no? With that, I walked away, truly not wanting to waste any more time on fools. For many days afterward, I was completely occupied with work on the project and paid no attention to them. By the time I remembered, I realized it had been ages since I last saw Julian. Without much thought, I grabbed a car from the garage and drove straight to his house. The living room was empty, but I could hear the rustling of papers from the study. I opened the door and saw Julian bent over, flipping through something. The moment he noticed me, he immediately stood up in delight. Lena, I prepared a surprise for you. I walked over as he slid a contract toward me. At first glance, I recognized it was the very project I'd been pursuing. This project is in your hands? Julian nodded. Yeah, my dad gave it to me for practice. Casually flipping through it, I saw our family company's name already filled in, just awaiting my signature to claim the project. Are you insane? This is a billion-dollar deal, I know. Julian smiled. Lena, you want it, I happen to have it. Giving it to you, isn't that only natural? To say I wasn't moved would be a lie, my heart was completely filled to the brim. Then I should repay you somehow. Julian took my hand. Anything will do. Okay. Even after leaving the marriage registration office, Julian was still excited. Holding my hand, he insisted we had to celebrate. I just hadn't expected Gabriel to find out so quickly. Almost as soon as we arrived at the restaurant, Gabriel showed up. Looking at the marriage certificates in our hands, Gabriel's expression turned utterly grim. Lena, how could you? I motioned for Julian to go inside first. Turning to Gabriel, I said, if you're sick, go see a doctor. Gabriel suddenly grabbed my arm, his eyes filled with anguish. I'm sorry, Lena. I know I was wrong. You can hit me, scold me, just please forgive me. I sneered and shot back, regret what? That you didn't save me, or that you dragged me to death with you in our past life? Gabriel's grip on my hand instantly loosened, the color draining completely from his face. It seems he finally realizes what he did wrong in his past life. I was about to step past him into the restaurant when Gabriel suddenly dropped to his knees before me. Disregarding the bustling crowd at the entrance, he began slapping his own face without hesitation. Lena, I was wrong, I truly know I was wrong. Please forgive me. I fell silent. Is it possible? Gabriel suddenly seemed to have an epiphany and spoke excitedly. Lena, it's all because of Serena, isn't it? That's why you won't forgive me. Please believe me, trust me. I'll definitely give you a satisfying answer. I stared at him in horror, never expecting such words to come from his mouth. Just then, Julian walked out from inside, and I quickly followed him in. My father had heard about me securing that project and smoothly handed the company over to me. I casually mentioned the marriage registration to them, and they didn't ask too many questions, just said it was my own choice. Not long after, I heard from friends that Gabriel's family was about to go bankrupt. The Gabriel family was already short on funds, and now with my family directly withdrawing the financial chain, their situation became even more dire. They had gambled everything in an all-or-nothing attempt to secure this project. But in the end, the project fell into my hands. Without the project to recoup their investment, the Gabriel family's financial chain immediately collapsed, and the entire conglomerate declared bankruptcy. I never imagined that when Gabriel's family was on the verge of bankruptcy, Serena would abscond with all of their money and flee abroad, crushing Gabriel's last shred of hope. By the time I heard this news, I had already taken the company to new heights. I thought I would never hear of Gabriel again in this lifetime, but never expected to see his name appear next, on a crime investigation program. Consumed by hatred for Serena who had destroyed his life, he had tracked her down relentlessly before stabbing her heart, repeatedly. Just because Serena's cries for help were too loud, the neighbors called the police, resulting in him being pinned to the ground before he could even leave the house. I watched the news with no surprise at all, simply lying in Julian's arms while holding our newly bought puppy and saying, Potato, if you're reborn as a human in your next life, don't become this kind of person, someone who shifts all responsibility onto others, thinking themselves the most innocent one when in truth, they're the most malicious.